The following is a bit of a joke video where I review desktop interfaces found in a few games. Hi, I'll be checking out some more desktop interfaces this time that have caught my eye, starting with, I think it is called the World Machine. It comes packaged on Steam with this thing called OneShot and it costs about $10. Now compare that to any reasonable desktop Linux distribution being completely free. When booting up, there is this whole sequence, wonder if it slows the startup down, and then it starts loading. The World Machine by the World Machine Labs. But hey, we do get a nice splash screen and the startup sound. Not every operating system has that. Here is the default look, it's looking pretty black and purple. The layout is pretty Windows-like. Programs are started up by clicking on desktop shortcuts. There is a taskbar on the bottom, but all it has is running applications on the left and the clock and a button to minimize all on the right. Seems like they intended to replicate the Windows workflow. Ha! Is that so? In parentheses, winking face emoji. However, there is no menu. Even the option to shut down is an application accessed from the same desktop grid. The interface seems to be made out of basic rectangles. There are no gradients, rounded corners or shadows, but at least it is not just plain white. Is this an example of doing this simplistic look right, keeping it modern and fresh? The icons here are one color and in this pixel art style, alright. Animations are pretty lacking, but there is this minimized transition. There are a couple sound effects that add some flavor to the desktop. At least the accent color sees a lot of use. However, the colors are really vibrant and can get hard on your eyes, especially against a dark background and interface. This is more noticeable when changing colors, which you can do from the Themes app. Now there are settings for display, audio volume, notifications and language. Changing the language requires a restart. A lot of the settings are in separate programs. Input devices in controls, accent color in themes as I said, and wallpapers in wallpapers. Now I am one to judge a desktop by the wallpaper. The default one is also just black and purple, so pretty simple, but looks pretty alright actually. Even so, there is a selection of wallpapers. I'm sure you can find something pleasant here. The design perhaps most reminds me of the new Cosmic desktop with the colorful borders and overall dark look, but in a more lightweight way. There is a help file, or should I say help folder, with short interactive tutorials on navigating the system and handling files. Good for someone new to computers or just for who hasn't gotten the hang of this particular interface. Very nice. Then again, Windows XP famously had the Tour app, and GNOME and KDE desktops have their welcome screens. Speaking of navigation, I can move the mouse around and click with it using my controller. Take that, some desktop operating systems you are. There is a documents folder you can access from the desktop. You might need some files here. The system includes one game, OneShot. It's pretty alright. Plenty of files seem to do with that game. There is the audio player music box that comes with the soundtrack. I quite like Geothermal. The image viewer gallery shows images. Scenes from OneShot are included. It seems like new images are placed in the system while I play it. Are these screenshots of me playing? Is the World Machine spying on me? That said, some additional wallpapers and accent colors are found in-game and placed in the system after that. So, what's up there? Is it like when you install Krita on a KDE system and that brings its own color scheme to the system settings? One accent color you can additionally get is rainbow. It doesn't put an actual rainbow gradient on your desktop, though come to think of it, it might actually complement the setups of some people. Anyway, it just constantly smoothly changes color. Bit of a funky one anyway. There is some friends program. Is this a social network or some catalog? I see some people with their images and descriptions. Hidden deep in the documents folder is a timer program that tracks system uptime and one-shot playthrough time. You can move the windows around and minimize them, but not resize. If I had a nickel for every application here that can be maximized, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, and it's weird it happened only twice. I'm talking one-shot and gallery. That's an odd place for the button when maximized, though. Only 6 windows can be open at a time, because that's how much fits on the taskbar. The one-shot game and music box cannot be open at the same time, some audio output quirks probably. The simple design and the limitations I just mentioned probably help keep buggy behavior away, though I did see the text viewer show some weird things once. Mind the occasional tearing in-game, maybe one-shot is a bit much for the desktop to handle. Also, at one point when playing the game, the background suddenly went black and I started noticing some tearing on the screen. Hopefully this won't really affect the application. Oh my god! So the look here is pretty simplistic and yet colorful. I'm kinda digging it. However, there is no real menu, so the desktop could easily get cluttered like that. There aren't really any productivity apps on here, and I don't see a way to add any programs or files to that. It got multiple updates in 2024, but none since then. Maybe it is not being worked on anymore. It looks alright, but what you can do with it is really limited. The one-shot game is what everything revolves around, and the only reason it might be the money's worth. Now for something else. 98XX was supposedly made by Mirace Incorporated in 1998 and still got updates in 2024. Talk about a long support window. This costs $3, which is less than the World Machine, but still costs. I leave the store links in the description, of course. It has a file size of 666 megabytes. There is this advertisement for it, also played on first startup. When booting up, the startup sound sounds familiar. Was it an unused Windows one? Is this copyrighted? Do they have their permission to use it? What is this? This is clearly a Windows XP parody, nothing else. Was this done in MS Paint? The design here is not so good. Well, at least this has a start menu, settings only have display settings and factory reset, pretty plain. And there's a bigger variety of applications. I can surf the web at least. Here is the creator's homepage. There is a text editor this time, as you can see. Audio player, let's hear some of the soundtrack. Conveniently, I can reverse. Sexworld.com/report. You can make phone calls if needed, and invert and brighten up photos. It has a pixel art paint program if you'd like to play around with that. Of course, there's the documents folder. That's just the Windows XP icon. You can encrypt files with a 3-digit code. I'm not very sure how secure this is, as it only takes a computer 1,000 iterations to test all combinations. There are numerous games installed, mostly by Calvis Games. Surely they are as good as OneShot.
It's Talking Gerald.
They are pretty trash. Here is just an asteroid shooter, there's not much going on. Okay, I failed and the level is suddenly different. Wait, did the system crash? Okay, this thing is cursed.